Hi guys, so at the time of doing this video, I am about a week further on from having watched Halloween Ends at the cinema, and I did think about doing an updated franchise ranking, but ultimately I only did it about a year ago, just after Halloween Kills came out, and I haven't rewatched all the films since then. So if I was to make a new Halloween rankings now, I would literally be doing it just for the sake of inserting Halloween Ends into the list somewhere. So I thought instead, why not have a celebration of Jamie Lee Curtis? She's always been one of my favourite actresses, although looking at her filmography the other day, I could see there are many, many films of hers that I've not seen and I'm just not interested in. But I have seen enough to do a top 10, and I've even got some honourable mentions, so I'll quickly show you those. First up, Blue Steel. Now, I'm going to guess that Jamie Lee was about 30 when she made this. She'd come out of her horror cycle, but she was still quite young. In this, she's a young rookie cop who, this guy develops an obsession with her, and they have a bit of cat and mouse throughout the movie. It's mostly set in New York, and there's a big shootout at the end. I thought it was a really exciting, gory thriller when I was a teenager. And when I was in my 30s, I remembered this film and bought it on Blu-ray. I spent like £14 on it, but I regret that now because the film was not as good as I remembered at all. I kind of recommend giving it a shot if you see it for free on streaming or something, but I certainly wouldn't spend the money on it that I did. And the other honourable mentions are just a few Halloween movies that don't make the list. Halloween Resurrection, Halloween H2O, and Halloween Kills. Now, I will say I do really like Halloween Resurrection, okay, but it's still not quite made the top 10. So we're getting rid of some of Jamie Lee's Halloween films before we get to the main rankings. But speaking of the main rankings, let's dive into it now, and we'll start with the film that I have at number 10. This is predominantly a Daniel Craig vehicle, but it's also quite the ensemble cast. There's lots of big names in this. Jamie Lee, Chris Evans, Ana de Almas, maybe, I'm not sure, but it's a really good cast. It's like a murder mystery set in some big mansion in the country somewhere. It's a very satisfying film. I've got very few complaints to make about this. The only odd thing about it is Daniel Craig's accent. He's trying to speak like somebody from Houston, and when I saw this in the cinema, it took me most of the movie to get used to that accent. There are going to be a couple of sequels to this, although I think they're going straight to Netflix, which is a shame. I would have liked to have gone back and watched more of this character on the big screen, but at least we're getting the movies at all. I don't think Jamie Lee will be back for 2 and 3. I think this is one of those franchises where the main character, i.e. whoever Daniel Craig was playing, is going to be the main constant, and then the rest of the cast changes from movie to movie. But this was a good time. It was an evening well spent at the cinema, and definitely recommended. I'm not going to dwell too long on this one because I've just recently done a full-length review of Halloween Ends, so go and check that video out if you want to. But if you've no intention of doing that, I will quickly tell you that I'm very much in the camp of people who like this film. I wasn't looking forward to it in the lead up to it, which is odd because I'm the world's biggest Halloween fan. Well, I guess I'm not actually the world's biggest Halloween fan if I wasn't looking forward to this movie, but once I got into the cinema and I started watching it, I really enjoyed it. I've always been someone who doesn't mind the formula being shaken up from time to time. You know, if you're the sort of person who needs the same thing every single time, then yeah, of course you're not going to like Halloween Ends. But I'm very much open to new types of approaches when it comes to Halloween movies or Friday the 13th movies. I've said for years they should do a found footage film that involves Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees. Why not? Because these franchises are going to keep coming back all the time and all the time. So yeah, just do something different from time to time, and Halloween Ends absolutely delivers that. And in terms of being a good Jamie Lee Curtis film, this is the best Laurie Strode, as played by Jamie Lee anyway, that I've seen since the original. I mean, even though I like most of these films, they haven't always been kind to the Laurie character as played by Jamie Lee. I mean, Halloween 2 from 1981, really good example, because that's a really good slasher film that doesn't really have a good Laurie in it at all. But this final film that Jamie Lee did, I think Laurie's great in this. You get to see a happy Laurie in the first half of the film, and then eventually you get a really fitting final battle with Myers, I think, given the amount of times that Jamie Lee has come back in this franchise. So yeah, I like Halloween Ends, and I'm definitely looking forward to the home release. So when it comes to this one, Halloween 2018, I've just about given it the edge over Halloween Ends when it comes to the question of which is the best of the David Gordon Green trilogy. I think the fact that this is more of a pure traditional slasher film is probably the main reason why it's just about won out in this instance, but it might not always in the future, I don't know. I wasn't bowled over though by the idea of Halloween 2018 when it was first floated, this notion of bringing back Jamie Lee again to play an even more depressed version of Laurie than what we already saw in H2O. I wasn't hugely enthralled by that, but the film won me over. Jamie Lee won me over. Of course she was going to do that. And I think it's a damn fine Halloween film now, having seen it like 3 or 4 times. Plus, it's got one of my favourite Halloween scenes of all time. That part of the film where Myers just goes from house to house and just starts killing random people. I think that's amazing. And possibly they should have made that scene even longer, actually. Just do most of the street. That would have been absolutely fantastic. But yeah, Halloween 2018, after a slow start where I didn't massively like it on first viewing, it's really gone up for me. It's gone up in my estimations with every single viewing since then. One of the last great Arnold Schwarzenegger films before he just started to fall off the A-list. I think he did Eraser after this, which was really good as well. And then after that, it started to become slim pickings. So in this film, he plays like a secret agent and Jamie Lee is his wife, but she doesn't know he's a secret agent. And then halfway through the film, she finds out and then they end up becoming like a tag team of secret agents by the end. It's really good. It's got a great little role for Bill Paxton. He's very funny in this. I can still remember renting this out with my dad as soon as it was out on home video, and I don't think he liked it. I think there's a tongue-in-cheekness about this film which put him off a little bit, but I loved it. The action in it is absolutely fantastic. Jamie Lee and Arnie work very well together, and the final assault on the big tall building with the fighter jet, that blew me away at the time. I mean, if I saw that kind of stuff now, it wouldn't really have that much effect on me, but at the time, in the mid-90s, that was just the most amazing little action scene. It was just absolutely awesome. So yeah, True Lies is sort of like a bit of a forgotten gem, I think. It's not even come out on Blu-ray yet, I don't think. But yeah, it's a great film in the canon of James Cameron films and in the canon of Arnie films. And yeah, I would class it as one of Jamie Lee's best as well. So we're back on Halloween again with Halloween 2. This is a great Halloween film, albeit maybe not a great Jamie Lee film because Laurie spends most of this film in bed. That's this film's biggest issue, actually, that there isn't really a heroine. You can't call Loomis the star of the show. He spends too much of the story sort of on the periphery, but nobody in the hospital grabs this film by the scruff of the neck and takes Myers head on. You know, most of the new characters just get bumped off extremely easily. So in the end, it's almost like Jamie Lee just sits up in bed and says, right, okay, fine, I'll get out of bed and run around for a bit if no one else is going to do it. But it's still a really great slasher film. You know, I don't think they knew what to do with this in terms of story and characters. They were very indecisive about how to follow on the success of the original. But if you just concentrate on the stalking and the slashing when it comes to Halloween 2, you'll have a great time. The hospital is a fantastic atmosphere to set something like this in. And yeah, it's definitely one of the best Halloween films for me. Incidentally, when it comes to this Blu-ray, make sure you get this and not a copy on DVD, because I didn't actually like this film for quite a few years because I had it on DVD and the audio quality, picture quality was just absolutely garbage. Getting the Blu-ray, the difference is like night and day. It's a really good version on the Blu-ray, but the DVD version was absolutely awful. And I've no idea why to this day, why the DVD for Halloween 2 was so bad, but you can buy DVDs for the rest of this franchise and they're actually of a pretty good quality. But there we go, weird thing. So into the top 5 we go with one of the most unheralded and underappreciated Jamie Lee films of all time. That would be Road Games. This has got to be one of the most extravagant Blu-rays I think I've ever bought. It's one of those that comes with booklets and posters and things. It's by Indicate. I think I might have spent like 25 quid on this. I must have been unusually flush at the time because I hadn't even seen the movie at the time I bought it. It was a little bit of a gamble, but luckily it turned out to be a very good film. So this is about a trucker played by Stacey Keach who lives in Australia, and he's got to go on this big drive from like the east part of Australia, all the way over to Perth, I think, on the west coast. But he spots this, what he thinks is a serial killer, very early on in his journey. And so this serial killer just happens to be going the same way as the truck. So they have a bit of cat and mouse all the way across Australia. You get a lot of great shots of the Australian desert in this. It's a very visually pleasing movie. Along the way, the trucker, the good guy, he picks up Jamie Lee as a hitchhiker. That's who she plays in this film. So they have a little bit of a romance going on as they're trying to figure out where the serial killer is in relation to them. There's a little bit of The Hitcher in this, if you want comparisons, a little bit of Steven Spielberg's Duel. I wouldn't call it a horror film. It's a little bit too light at times, the tone of it. It's more like a thriller, but I found it to be absolutely gripping, this. I really, really enjoyed it, and it's got one of the best jump scares I've ever seen. Literally, there's this one moment, I wasn't prepared for it, and I literally almost went flying off the couch. It was quite fantastic. But yeah, it's a little gem of a film, this. Not many people might have heard of it, but it's really, really fantastic. Yep, the classic film Prom Night gets a high up spot on this list. Jamie Lee, at this point of her career, was very much capitalising on the success that she'd brought on herself by doing Halloween. The only slightly shaky thing about Prom Night for me is the backstory and the motivation of the killer. All that stuff is a little bit shaky, but the rest of the film is a bloody great time. It builds up slowly, the story in this. It doesn't rush. It gives you time to get to know the school and the characters, but you know that there's trouble bubbling just under the surface. But when the kills come, they're absolutely fantastic for the most part. This film as well has got one of my favourite chases I've ever seen in a slasher film. It's just absolutely fantastic. I don't think Jamie Lee is pushed as an actress in this film necessarily, but she's still good in it, and the soundtrack's really great as well. One time I just randomly put the soundtrack for this on when I was cooking dinner for the kids. It's that good. I just like the music in it. I like the vibe. I like the mixture of disco and horror that you get in this. It's really cool. I did a rankings of all the Prom Night films because they went on to make quite a few of them, albeit mostly they're their own separate things. They're not really related to each other for the most part, but out of all the Prom Night films, this original one is still, by a country mile, the best of the bunch. So by the skin of its teeth, literally the skin of its teeth, Terror Train just beats Prom Night into the third position. I can't even remember which film came first out of Terror Train and Prom Night. They both came out around about the same time, 1980, 1981, but I can't quite recall which one was first. But I think Jamie Lee has more to do in this one. She has to show a lot more emotion. There are quite a few scenes where she has to look absolutely terrified. She definitely has to bring her A game in Terror Train. Also, this film is set on a train, and that's a big thing for me. I love trains. I love slasher films. So this is like the merging of two things that I really love. And if you want another reason, I think the killer is better in this film than Prom Night. The guy who does the killing in this, he's an absolutely fascinating character, and he's very clever. The way that he goes about his business throughout the film is really, really cool. And the whole atmosphere on the train is great. You get some really good characters, good kills, like I've said. And yeah, it's a very, very satisfying horror film. It has recently been remade. I just haven't seen it yet. I think it's available on Tubi. Now, that's, in one respect, that's a shame because I don't want to get any more paid subscriptions at the moment. I presume there's a cost to signing up to Tubi. But I'm sure somehow I will get a chance to watch the remake, but I can't see it beating the original. The original Terror Train is a fantastic slasher film. It's one of the classic slasher films from the early 80s golden era. So at number 2, we've got the original The Fog. Now, admittedly, this is not one of the best Jamie Lee performances out there, but I've ranked these films in the order of the quality of the movies, not in the order of Jamie Lee's performances necessarily. It's just the way that I wanted to do it. But The Fog is a fantastic film. I first watched it on TV in the 90s, and I think I watched it a second time on TV in the 90s. If you don't know, it's a kind of ghostly supernatural tale set in a seaside town where some dead sailors come back for revenge after exactly 100 years since they were tricked into steering their ship onto some rocks, and they died, and they left a lot of gold in their ship, which the town stole for themselves. But it's just a great atmosphere, this film. Possibly for some people not enough happens throughout it, but I just love the slow build-up of tension. It's got one of the best horror soundtracks I've ever heard. If it's not necessarily one of Jamie Lee's best films, it's certainly one of John Carpenter's best films. It's a personal favourite of mine, and I'm slightly sad that it always has to play second fiddle to the film that we've got at number one. So with that said, let's now move on and find out what is my all-time favourite Jamie Lee Curtis film. And if you've not already guessed what is the number one, I would be very, very surprised. Yep, it's 1978 Halloween, just when I think that surely I will be able to go a significant period of time without talking about this film on my channel. Up pops a video where I am required to talk about it once more. So here we are. This is one of my favourite films of all time. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. I think most people are pretty much in agreement as to just how great this is. I've never gone out and bought a Blu-ray or a 4K for this. This version that I'm holding right here, 25th anniversary, I bought this in 2004, I think. I've kept it in very good nick, even though I watch it pretty much every year. But for a DVD, the quality of this is absolutely fantastic. It's nothing like the DVD release of Halloween 2 that came out. So I'm not in a massive rush to upgrade this, though at some point I think I will make the jump and find out what the 4K looks like. But yeah, I will be watching this pretty much every year till the day that I leave God's green earth. It is one of the most important films in my life. It's absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, Halloween, the original, is today's winner. It's going to win most rankings that I do, to be honest, but there we go. Right, so that is the end of my Jamie Lee rankings. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll be back soon for another video. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.